you done now?
Pic Six!
Today we're talking about 1996's The Phantom. In the action-packed world of The Phantom, Kit Walker, played by Billy Zane, is the 21st descendant in a long line of masked heroes sworn to protect the innocent and fight evil. Known as the Ghost Who Walks, the Phantom operates in the mysterious jungles of Bengala, where his mythic presence strikes fear into the heart of the villains. When a ruthless businessman named Xander Drax, played by Treat Williams, seeks to unite three ancient skulls that grant ultimate power, the Phantom must race against time to stop him. Along the way, Kit teams with the intrepid journalist Diana Palmer, played by Christy Swanson, who gets swept into the adventure as they travel from the depths of the jungle to the bustling streets of New York City. With thrilling action, daring escapes, and a touch of humor, The Phantom is a classic tale of good versus evil brought to life by great visuals and a heroic legacy passed down through generations. Can the Phantom stop Xander Drax before he unleashes chaos in the world? Or will this be the end of the legend? This is The Phantom.
Just take a look around. Darkness rules the earth.
In a dangerous world.
Governments crumble. Chaos reigns.
In a treacherous time.
There is opportunity in chaos.
Evil is a fact.
We shall succeed where they have failed.
Drax is on a quest for a supernatural power.
They know far too much.
And courage.
Stop them. You're the only one who can.
Is a phantom.
Who was that guy?
Somebody I already killed.
There are some who say he is only a myth. Soon they will discover the Phantom is real.
Pic Six!
Ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived. This is Pic Six. My name is the Beau Brad Gilmore, joined by Jeff Smith. Jeff, first off, how are we doing? Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. I'm so excited. I've been sitting here in this very spot since the last episode of Clue the Movie Podcast, waiting for this day to come. And here we are, picking our six.
Yes, guys. So look, this is your first time tuning in to us. First off, sorry. Secondly, no, I'm kidding. Secondly, Jeff and I just finished a 2-year run of Clue the Movie Podcast, where we watch Clue the Movie 1 minute at a time. Jeff is a documentarian who is the man behind Whodunit, the Clue documentary. I have a couple of other interests outside of the world of movies, including, Back to the Future podcast, obviously a book about Back to the Future, James Bond, work in pro wrestling, ESPN, CW, all those good things. But we decided that we wanted to continue going with our podcasting journey in this idea form called Pic Six, which is this show. So every year, for as long as we decide to do this, every month, Jeff and I will both pick 6 movies the other one hasn't seen or has no recollection of that we find to be some of our favorite movies or some of our hidden treasures or guilty pleasures. And we will watch them and then break them down through a series of categories that we have while watching the movie and just general conversation. We're going to try to get filmmakers involved, actors involved who are in these movies for you all. But sometimes it's just going to be Jeff and I doing what Jeff and I do. And that's what the concept of Pic Six is. Jeff, this was I wouldn't say a drunken text because I don't drink, but this was a late night text I sent you months and months ago. Hey, I have an idea for the next show. Here it is. And your response was like,
dream.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Very late in the night, which usually panics me. But it was Brad Gilmore with I have our next show, and very detailed text about what it was. And then 10 seconds later, the logo for it popped up, and with us, posed right in front of a logo that says Pic Six, and with the spelling and everything, it was like he had a vision. And who am I to say lame?
Yeah.
How would that have been like at in the morning when I finally messaged back going, nah?
I mean, I would have accepted it. I would have accepted it because I know not every idea is a good idea, but I felt passionately enough to make
there was passion.
the cover art at the time.
Graphic,
The graphic.
There was a thumbnail. Whenever I get any kind of idea that has a thumbnail, then that's pretty serious business.
It's not just a one-off text.
I don't argue a thumbnail ever, and that's advice for all the kids out there.
Don't argue with a thumbnail. But we wanted to start with. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also had a feeling I knew what the first movie was going to be because throughout the Clue movie podcast, the Phantom has come up many times as you haven't seen the Phantom? You haven't seen the Phantom? And I had not seen the Phantom. And it was also a movie that I'm sure there were times you thought when you said, you got to go see you have to see the Phantom. And then we'd get back together to do the other podcast and you'd say, so? I go, no. And it never occurred to me. I think I started to watch it once on a day I had bad Wi-Fi and I didn't get past the bridge, which we'll get to.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wi-Fi crapped out. And I said, well, that's a sign. I'm not meant to see the Phantom. Unless there's some kind of reason that could be either monetized or provide entertainment to the world, then that's when I'll watch the Phantom. And here we are in that exact scenario.
Lo and behold, we're here. We're here.
And I have seen the Phantom.
Now you have seen the Phantom. So I want to tell you first. I have seen
the Phantom.
I want to tell you first. So this is how we'll always start off. If it's a movie that I selected, I'm going to tell you why I love this movie. And then we will get Jeff's reaction, overall first reaction to the film, kind of your first impression, if you will. And then at the end, obviously, of this whole scenario, we'll figure out if Jeff actually liked the movie or not. But, for me, this is a movie that I remember going to Blockbuster, dating myself, and seeing the cover of. And what was really cool about this film is it came in a kind of the shell VHS case, not just the regular paper sleeve. It was in the shell VHS case, and it was all purple. The shell was purple, and it had the Phantom on the front with his fist ring in the foreground. And if you would move the VHS cover, the lasers from his ring would shoot out. It was one of those kind of things. So you remember? I don't know what those things are called, like holographic. Is it
yeah,
holographic?
I know what you mean. They're the ones where you could scratch it and it sounded like you were doing wiki 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 whack.
Like some turntables.
I had notebooks in school like that where I would do Rocket by Herbie Hancock because you could go.
Right, exactly.
Love that.
So that's what the cover was. So it got my attention, and I had no idea what the Phantom was. And I remember going and watching it. And then the first time I watched it, I said, "This is the best movie I've ever seen in my life." At the time. And this is when having no, really film knowledge or experience. This is me 7, 8 years old, and just loving the purple costume and the skulls and just the whole world of it. I just found the adventure great. And then I've come to know that these are kind of my movies. I love adventure, treasure, those kind of things are fun. And then when you read about the Phantom, the actual character that the movie's based on, the Lee Falk comic strip series where this started. This predates Superman. The Phantom predates Superman. There's a case to be made that he is the first superhero ever. You can trace it back to the early 1900s, prior to Superman. I think maybe even the late. When did it come out? I think it was the early 1900s. But
well, in my research, I saw he's the first one to wear skin tight costume.
Yeah.
Which they carried through in the movie as well. That is, hello, Billy Zane.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. 1936, February 1936 is when Lee Falk first debuted the Phantom in a comic strip, and he wrote for the Phantom until his death in 1999. So this was his lifelong passion. Now, the Phantom also in comic book world is also known for being the first hero that has just the white for the eyes when they put the mask on. You know what I'm talking about? Where you see it in Batman, the animated series, or Green Lantern, Robin, whoever wears the mask, you don't see the pupils. That started with the Phantom as well. And Phantom, from a comic book standpoint, has been all over the place. There's been a run in DC Comics published for the Phantom. There was a run in Marvel Comics for the Phantom. He's been in his own comics. He's been in, I think, some Dark Horse runs and things like that. So he is a real well-known character in the comic book realm. But this movie, I guess the lore of it, the idea of the ghost who walks, and this is a guy who continues to live forever just because they're passing it down to family member, I really liked. And that we're kind of just thrown into this world immediately. You get a little bit of, for those who came in late, you get a little bit of exposition at the top, and then boom, we're right in it. And
very little bit, very efficient in its origin story.
Yes, we're going to give you about
30 seconds.
We're going to give you about a minute and a half of how we are here. And
I appreciated that.
For those who came in late, where the movie starts, that was also how the comic book would start. So I really loved this movie, directed by Simon Wincer, who we will have a portion of an interview I did with him played on this show today. He also did Free Willy, movies like that. I'm really, really fond of the film, although either most people aren't as fond of it or they haven't seen it, or they're like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember that movie. Jeff, first impressions of The Phantom.
Okay. I will say the first thing I thought when, and I mentioned it just a second ago, the origin story is quick. He's a boy. He's on a pirate ship. He watches his dad die. He finds himself on an island where the people of the island raise him, and boom, title. That's it. That's all you need. And I think the movie as a whole, a lot of it for me is you don't really need to know anything. And a lot of things aren't going to make sense. It's happening because the movie's happening, and just either you go with it or you don't. So watching it, it took me a few minutes to kind of get the tone and to get where that's what it is. And that the Phantom character in and of itself, he's kind of a dork. And that took me a second because that's unusual as well. And that's not what I was expecting either. He's just kind of he's like if Superman kept his Clark Kent persona as Superman all the time, it was just kind of aw shucks. And, there's a wonderful moment, I think, that sums up his entire character where he's running through, is it a train station or a hotel or something? And he bumps into a lady and she drops her purse. And he stops his chase to pick it up and hand it to her and apologizes, and then resumes his big chase. That's the Phantom. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins. He's been raised on the island, even though he did go to school in America, which I was kind of confused by because I thought, oh, he's been on this island this whole time. That's why he is. Oh no, he spent a lot of time in America. Okay. But if you kind of go with it, like the big weapon that is supposed to take over the world is not practical. It's you'd have to carry it around a lot. It's a bunch of skulls that just shoot lasers. But okay, for the movie, you just kind of go, oh, that's the MacGuffin. All right, that's it. That's fine. And as long as you kind of shift your mind to this, you don't need. It's a movie because it's a movie. It's happening because it's happening. It's fun. So I'll say it's fun. I enjoyed other movies similar. I'm sure this movie gets grouped in a lot with The Rocketeer and The Shadow.
Yes.
And I definitely got more out of The Rocketeer because I think there was more to the main character. But I really liked Treat Williams.
Oh, we're going to talk about Treat Williams.
He lived up to his first name.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely a treat, and he looked like he was having the best time. And some of the lines he says while the magic is happening, and even his last line, I thought was
yes. We're gonna get there.
So, yeah,
we're gonna get there.
As a whole, I appreciated it for what it was. I think I would appreciate it more from nostalgia, and I can see how it's a movie that people would grow up with, especially because it's PG.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that now I know it came in a clamshell VHS makes sense. It's a family movie. There's really no violence. There's very limited profanity. I think there are a couple S's dropped in there every once in a while, but even the romance is barely. It's kind of there, but it's just here's a movie where this guy is running around in purple and they're scared of him.
Now,
I
yes.
killed him already. It couldn't be another guy in a purple suit.
No. Well, I mean,
Got to be a ghost.
he's the ghost who walks. So that look,
Who walks?
tonally for this movie, you have to, I think, buy into the tone real early. Because if you don't buy into the campy B movie that it really is, and I think it's not the B movie, pulp, show or pulp style film that Indiana Jones films are. It's a different type of pulp. It's way more campy. Even though Indiana Jones, like Raiders and not Crystal Skull, Raiders and Last Crusade and Temple of Doom, the 80s run, they all have very campy moments at times for Indy, and there are these mysticism elements to it and whatever. This one's way more campier. I would say like an Indiana Jones movie is more like a Sean Connery Bond, whereas this is like a Roger Moore Bond.
Roger Moore. Okay. Yes.
That's my comparison for these. But again, the clamshell, that really gives it away of where the love for the movie is, because it was this PG movie. Now, this movie did not do great. It was released in the summer of 1996, a little under 2 hours, which I appreciate. I appreciate when movies were under 2 hours and you still felt like you got a good movie. Movie's 100 minutes. Can't beat that. It cost about $50 million to make this movie in 1996. And it got $23.5 million at the box office.
Yeah. Speaking of 100, that's an appropriate number, because I was looking at the ranking of 1996. In the box office, what ranking was The Phantom? And it was number 100.
Really?
Of the year. It was after 99 was a movie called Extreme Measures, which I had to look up because I didn't remember that movie either. And that was a movie with Hugh Grant and Gene Hackman and Sarah Jessica Parker, I think. So, sure. And then number 101 was Fled with Lawrence Fishburne and Stephen Baldwin and young Salma Hayek.
Oh.
Which, but it was number 100 of the year. Good round number, though.
Yes, very good. Very good round number. So just to put it in, though, to terms for everybody, as far as what, like $1 million. Let's see. Let's look at this. So $1 million in 1996 compared to today is essentially $2 million. That's how inflation works. $1 million is $2 million. So this movie was $100 million to make in today's dollars. I don't know if I see $100 million here, but there are some beautiful shots in the movie.
There's a lot of practical effects that are fun. It's a very good looking movie. I was watching the review that Siskel and Ebert did of The Phantom, and Gene Siskel, not a huge fan, but Roger Ebert really liked it. He thought it was great. And he really complimented. He said it's the best looking movie he had seen in a long time. And it's true. There's a lot. The cinematography is so nice that I noticed that the end credits of the movie are just still shots of all the locations from the movie. And the set of his lair, the Phantom's lair, is pretty cool.
Yes.
Pretty nice.
Yes, I do want to get into that. But I do think that the movie is a very good looking movie. It's pretty, and it shows off, the jungles where they filmed in the best way. I know they filmed a lot in Australia. They filmed a lot in Thailand. And I think all the New York stuff was filmed in California. Go figure. But sure. it was a really fun world to me that we got into. So that's why I want to get into a couple things here. I want to get into a couple things because obviously the movie has not withstood the test of time, but there are elements of this film that I think are undeniably fun. Okay. And we're going to get to our first category right now, where I think we're probably going to have the same answer. But our first category is scene stealer. This is your favorite character from the movie or the favorite performance from the movie. I think you probably led on to it a little earlier. Yeah. But Treat Williams as Xander Drax is your pick?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
Why? He seems to be having the most fun he's a villain that is definitely enjoying being a villain, and he also is kind of a goofy kind of guy. Like when he first gets the two skulls together and it starts shooting lasers all over the place, he's just kind of going, yes, oh, this is neat. I'm paraphrasing now, but it's just like, hey, there you go. And he's just having a good time. And I think that I don't think he's a bad guy. Like, I'd hang out with him, and he just seems like a happy dude.
Seems like a happy dude.
An evil happy dude. But, like, I wouldn't want to hang out with Lex Luthor or the Joker. I would be afraid. But I think that with Drax, you're kind of like, hey, he's got some bad ideas, but he's having fun.
Yeah, I will say this, because I don't think that the Phantom is really known for its phenomenal acting performances overall. Like, everything's very one note, and like you said, they're all in the movie that they're in, except for Treat Williams. Treat Williams is like, look, I know what kind of movie this is. I don't know if y'all do, but I know my role, and I'm going to play the hell out of it. I'm going to be over the top. I'm going to be as villainous as I can be. I'm going to give you these line deliveries, which are so unique to this character. You really felt, because I'd seen Treat Williams in a lot of different things. Here's actually a fun fact. Treat Williams was supposed to be my name. That's what I was going to be named by my mother after Treat Williams, because she loved him so much in movies, right? And Treat Gilmore doesn't exactly have a great ring to it.
Dodged a bullet.
Dodged a big bullet there. But I think that I'd seen him in other things before this and since this. And to me, he really creates this Xander Drax character who's almost, I guess he's kind of the Trump of his day, as far as I'm talking about, like pre-president Trump, like the New York billionaire who's got his name on the buildings. There's the Drax building in New York, trying to take over the world. I think it modeled into maybe not just Trump, but that New York type, the New York money guy type. We don't know where he got his money from. We don't know if it's family money. We don't know what he's doing, but we do know that he's tied within the mob, and he's doing things extracurricularly in order to make this happen. And
he has the classic scene with all the mob guys around the table. Dick Tracy, a few years earlier, had a very similar scene where someone's not going to make it. Even like Kill Bill has the exact same scene where all the bad guys around the table, and if someone doesn't agree, and that's a cool scene right there. He's got an arm on him, that Drax.
Well, yes, and what I want to say, and why he's the scene stealer for me, is because really every scene that he's in, there's a memorable moment, a memorable line delivery, or you just feel like out of everyone in the movie, he inhabited the character the best. As an audience member, you really want to see him get his comeuppance. Like, you don't want him to win. And they say like a good villain thinks that he's right, and you can kind of understand why he wants to do the things he wants to do. I don't understand why Treat Williams, Xander Drax, wants these skulls. It's not really explained, other than he just wants this mystical power. How he finds out about them, not sure. What's his connection to the Sang Brotherhood? It's ambiguous at best.
Cuz.
Yeah, it's just cuz. But he is my favorite part of this movie as I've watched it as an adult. And by the way, he's a handsome son of a gun. Treat Williams is a really handsome dude.
Doesn't hurt. He's got good hair in this as well. You can't take away from the wig I think Billy Zane is wearing.
I don't know.
But we don't know. But what's interesting about his performance in this, and I guess what took me a second to kind of adjust to the tone of the movie, was at first I was watching and thinking this would benefit if it was a little bit more obvious in its spoofiness. Like I was reading that Joe Dante was originally attached to be the director of this. And Joe Dante, of course, did Gremlins and Inner Space and The Burbs and Small Soldiers, and he's fantastic. And I think, and even Bruce Campbell was talked about playing
the Phantom,
the Phantom, which I could totally see. But he would have been similar in his style to what Treat Williams was doing. And I don't know if that benefits the movie more or not, or it's just they decided that's not the movie that they're doing, because they could have gone even more over with isn't this ridiculous what we're doing? And why is this not explained? Because, all right, moving on, that we as the audience kind of have to decide, oh, that's what they're doing. Okay. It's not, they don't ever wink at the audience ever. They just play it pretty straight, and either you like that or you don't. So I could see how it's off-putting to some. Like, do they understand are they plot holes on purpose, or are they plot holes because it's not a good movie? I think it's on purpose, but they just never go all the way Treat Williams style. But he certainly did, and I think that's why he is the best character in it, because what's the phrase now? He got the assignment. He knew what he was in, and he went all the way, and everybody else was a little more subtle. I don't know if Christy Swanson got it. Can't tell. She's kind of bland in this. And I think Billy Zane really concentrated on his mannerisms as the Phantom, matching that style of 30s movies. There's a point where he goes to open a locked door, and he doesn't just like pull out the door. He like goes, like he does. It's really big, and he indicates big time. If it were a silent movie, you'd still get it. So I think his style is like that. So I don't know. I appreciate what Treat Williams is doing, and I think if anybody has a favorite character, I'd be very surprised if it's not him.
It would be really hard for it to not be Xander Drax. I mean, there's even a scene at the end. This isn't in one of my one-liners, but there's a scene at the end where he's talking to the Pirate King, Kabai Sang, and he goes, "My name is Xander Drax. Xanderdrax, begins and ends with a letter X." It's like, what is the point of that?
Yeah.
You just spelled it. We understand. Begins and ends with the letter X. And yes, he definitely knew what movie he was in. And that's why Treat Williams, Xander Drax, one of my favorites. Okay, big moment. Your favorite or most impactful scene in the movie? I'm going to go first on this one, because I think the best sequence or scene in the movie is when they're in the Museum of Natural History. I think that it encapsulates this movie in 5 minutes, because you see Billy Zane and Christy Swanson, they're going to go get the Jade Skull. And this is what I love always about like a great hero protagonist, is he always like points out like the history of the item. It's like very James Bond. Like, remember, I don't know how many James Bond movies you see, but it'd be like M would be like, "James, what do you know of diamonds?" And then, Bond would always be like, "Oh, well, not much." And then he would tell you everything that there is to know about diamonds.
Yeah. When
Billy Zane's character is here, Kit Walker, and they see the Jade Skull in the setting that it's in the Museum of Natural History, and he's like, this is wrong. This is the wrong time period. This is the wrong era. This is the wrong culture. And he's like so offended that they put this Jade Skull in the thing. And then he respects the history of what the skull is, because it comes from this Bengali jungle that he grew up in. But then also he has no care in the world and just takes one of the posts that hold up the velvet rope and just smashes the glass. And that's when she says, "Oh, well, we could just break the glass." Christy Swanson's character, and grabs the skull. He looked really cool in that moment. That was a very cool moment. Then it's followed by the craziness of Treat Williams, who enters, and he like shoos everybody away from the museum. "All right, bye-bye now, museum security. It's all under control." And then the two skulls come together, and there's a smoky bag, and then lasers shooting on a map that just so happens to be there, that points to the right place that they're supposed to go. Are they going to the Bermuda Triangle? No, they're going to the Devil's Vortex. They had to make it their own thing.
But it's true. What if they were in a different room when they have like been magnetized to a map? Or it doesn't matter, because movie is movie.
The movie is movie.
I think that's the scene where I went, oh, it doesn't matter. Okay,
it doesn't matter. It's happening right here and now. It's another great Treat Williams moment. Yeah. And to me, that's my favorite
scene. Talking to the audience on that. If you're wondering, how is this happening? It's happening right here and now. Shut up.
Just go with it. So that's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yes. For me, this is the scene where I got on board because it starts off. The movie starts with a fun, bridge, a rickety bridge, and a truck on a bridge, and it feels very Indiana Jones, and it makes sense because this movie was actually written by Jeffrey Boehm, who's the writer of Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So that checks, and director Simon Wincer had directed a lot of episodes of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, so it definitely has Indiana Jones in the DNA. I thought that scene with the rickety bridge was kind of a poor man's Indiana Jones, so I wasn't on board yet. But there's a wonderful scene with the Phantom and what's the Christy Swanson character's name?
Diana Palmer.
Diana. I knew I had an A. Diana. They're on a biplane, which she first questions, do you know how to fly? I'm like, shut up. Yes. And they're on the plane, and the Phantom's horse is running below the plane, and the horse is just as fast as a speeding biplane. Yes. And they have to jump from the plane. I forget why. They just do. They can't be on the plane anymore.
The plane got shot and it was losing fuel.
Oh, thank you. They're running out of fuel. Okay, so they don't want to land. They just want to jump. So, which is fine. It's much easier to jump on the horse that's keeping up with the plane below you. That's going to hurt, but we're going to do it. I like the Phantom jumps first because, hey, you don't know. Then he just met Christy Swanson. It's fine. He jumps from the plane and lands on his running horse and then looks up and goes, okay, now you. And she does it at the last second, which is great. And it looks really good, practical-wise. As far as the effects go, I bought it. And then the plane, of course, has to go blow up into a mountain, and it does. And that looks great, too. It looked really good. And I hadn't seen that in a movie before. So when that happened, I'm like, all right, Phantom, I'm on board.
I'm here.
And I stopped. I wrote down on my little notebook, I went, jumping on running horse. And I did write a lot of notes after that because at that point, I'm just watching the movie. But that was the scene that I came on board. So if you're watching The Phantom, ladies and gentlemen, and you're like, I don't know, hang on. Wait for the plane because it's pretty good. It's good. It's up there with an Indiana Jones stunt. I will give it that. That's where it went to where the promise of the Phantom was, I think.
Right. I actually I really do like that scene,
but in a great way.
But yeah, that's where I mean like the Roger Moore camp style of the movie. I mean, it's a pulp movie, and it doesn't play as serious as Last Crusade does. Let's say. To use that because it's the same screenwriter, but it definitely has that DNA in it, which is probably why I like the movie even more. I just love period, like pulp movies like this, and I can understand why that would get you on. That'd be the moment where I'm on. So that's the big moment. Okay, this one's probably an easy one, but this is Prop Shop. So this is your favorite prop that you want from the movie or you'd like to own. What would you go with on this one?
I mean, the ring is obvious. It's got to be. The ring is cool, and it's practical. It's not going to take up a lot of space in your home. You can move it. You can stick it in your pocket. You could wear it. The belt is good too, but that would take up a lot of space. His dad's belt. So I'd go ring.
You're gonna go ring? For me, it's the skulls. The skulls of Tuganda, the one of gold, the one of silver, and the one of jade. Not again, great tabletop item. You could use it in the middle of your dining table as a centerpiece.
Yeah.
It's a conversation starter. They look really cool. I actually think that they look really, really cool, those skulls, the way that they're designed with the jewels in the eyes and things like that. The ring, obviously, I actually think I have a Phantom ring.
Do you have one?
I think I do somewhere. As part of the movie, and my oldest brother is the one who told me about this, and then I went to go find one and buy one. But he said when he saw the movie in theaters, shout out my brother Rusty. He saw the movie in theaters, and he said part of buying a ticket, you got a little Phantom skull ring. Like that was their promotion. They really
expected this to be a hit, didn't they?
They thought it was going to be huge.
Expectations were high.
Yeah.
The promotion it seems good. Although I watched the trailer yesterday after I watched the movie, and not a good trailer. I can see how this one squeaked by because I was even looking at what else had come out and what I was doing in the summer of '96. I was going to the movies a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, for whatever reason, just is one of those. And I think the whole Pic Six thing is going to be a lot like that because you and I have seen a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ones that we haven't have been ones that have just squeaked by. Like for whatever reason, it wasn't like we said, I'll never see it, or I made a conscious choice not to see it. It just didn't happen. And I think but the trailer was not great. And it came out in June, so that's also very ambitious, especially in the 90s. The summer was a big deal.
I mean, it still is, right?
And there's not as many movies, but at the time there were so many. And this is, the summer of Independence Day and Nutty Professor and Twister had just come out a little bit before that, and so there was a lot. Cable Guy. These were all the big movies that I went and saw in the theater, but not the Phantom. And then the fact that they spent so much on the cool video box, that's at least 5 cents extra to have the chain image. But
yeah,
it worked. Look, it got a young Brad Gilmore.
It got me, but I agree. I almost wonder if this movie was just not only the wrong time of year, I also wonder if it was the wrong year. I wonder if by 96 people were still wanting to see movies in this vein, because you got to think this is post 89, and 89 is where you had Karate Kid 3 and Last Crusade and Back to the Future 2, and you had Batman, and you had all those great movies that came out in 89, which I felt like was the last breath of this style of film, in my opinion, right? Because in 93, when did Cop 3 come out? Beverly Hills Cop 3? 93? 94?
94.
94? To me, like, this feels like an 80s movie in the mid-90s, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I think it is either too late or too early.
Interesting, because this is in the middle between pre-Marvel. So this is before even Blade. This is before X-Men. This is 4 years before X-Men, and then this is 7 years post Batman. So it's in that middle time to where we've gotten a couple of bad Batman movies. We're about to get Batman and Robin.
I was just about to look up when Batman and Robin, because
that was 97. I'm pretty sure.
I thought. This is a weird period. I was thinking about this where, like, comic book movies, another one, I want to check the year for this too, because I think it's a little bit after this. But, Mystery Men, 99.
Oof.
Is a great comic book movie that did not do well. And it is, I think Mystery Men is another one that's before its time, because you could say it was the Guardians of the Galaxy of the 90s, where it's had a kind of irreverent tone. It kind of took the piss out of superhero movies a little bit. It was the movie that brought us Smash Mouth All-Star, not Shrek. It's originally from Mystery Men. But I think Mystery Men, had that come out, 10 years later, would have been huge. And it was just in that gap where the filmmakers were in the right spot, but the audience just wasn't there yet. I think the 90s were weird about that. Like, even like pre-Scream, you weren't going to do a horror movie because we didn't want those at the time. And then it just took the one to do it. And it wasn't The Phantom, and it wasn't Mystery Men. It, what had happened later probably till it was X-Men did it.
X-Men did it, and I think that was I think X-Men did it, but I think Spider-Man blew it up.
Sure. Even Spawn was in that 90s period, and Spawn didn't do well either. And I like Spawn, actually. One where Spawn
it's weird, but I like it.
Yeah, but it tanked as well. I remember seeing that in the theater, and I was the only one in the theater. And it was just, people weren't in that zone yet. They tried, the studios tried a bunch of them, and it just didn't pan out. But I think that's why these movies now get the cult following, because now the year is irrelevant. It's just a movie that you can find streaming anywhere. So you don't have to think about the context. You don't have to think about what was going on in the world, or if there was before Batman and Robin or after Batman Forever. It's just a fun movie. So take a look.
Yeah, and to me, that you're so right about the '90s period, because I think that we were. What would you say? Like the '90s were, I think they were still action movies were still doing well in the '90s. People like action movies. That's where you kind of had like the over the top ones, like the Armageddons and the
right
films of that ilk. Lethal Weapons were still doing good in the '90s, even those kind of films.
This is even where that summer Eraser, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie came out, and that was not a huge hit for Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that's when even he was starting to take a dip. So these movies that were huge in the 80s, and I think you're right to tie it to 89. There's a weird period there where spectacle was, I mean, you look at Jurassic Park as 93, but Last Action Hero was 93, and Last Action Hero did not do well. And so then it became disaster movies again, like Dante's Peak and Volcano and ID4. Independence Day was the big movie of this year, and that didn't really have huge stars in it. It just had the White House blow up, and that's what people were going. Twister, huge hit that year.
Yeah,
and that was mainly because the trailer just showed a tire flying into the car, and everybody's like, yes, I'm going. Speed around this time. It was more just like kind of high concept as opposed to who's in it and just what do you need to know? The bus needs to go fast. Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole movie. They're
That's
on the bus.
90s.
They're on the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I can see why this movie kind of just was out of its element as far as time period goes. But let's go.
People went to Mission Impossible, not
right.
The Phantom.
Let's go to our best lines of dialogue, one-liner legends. I have several for this.
Okay.
I've several.
Go ahead. I need to look mine up.
So my first one, I think you hinted to it earlier, is Xander Drax's delivery of "Unbelievable."
Last line.
Classic. And then he disintegrates into a million dust particles. The "unbelievable" was a great line reading by Xander Drax. Not a great line, but a great line reading. Also, Tree Williams says, "History is about to be made and you're all a part of it. Not an equal part, of course, but an important part nonetheless." Phenomenal. Is that one of yours?
Stole mine.
That was yours?
That's the only one I wrote down. That's the only one.
It's great.
So I thought that was great because that sums up his character right there. Like, hey, we should all be excited. I mean, you shouldn't be. I am.
You know, what's funny about that is I've heard Matthew McConaughey talk about this, is where when he reads a part in the script, he's reading the character they want him to play. He says, I look for I think he calls it a launch pad line. I look for the one line to where I read from the character and go, that's who this guy is. I can write a whole book about this guy because now I know who he is through this line of dialogue. He uses his example of oh my gosh, what's the first movie he's in? The All Right.
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused. He uses the example of Dazed and Confused when he says, you know, that's the thing about high school girls. I keep getting older and they keep staying the same age. That line, he said, when I read that, I knew who this guy was. When you read this line from Xander Drax, this is the launch pad line. History is about to be made. You're all a part of it. Not an equal part, of course, but an important part nevertheless. It's just beautiful. So I like that. I like Unbelievable. I like when Diana Palmer meets Devil, which is the name of the Phantom's wolf. And she says, your dog's a wolf. So it's just a stupid line, but I love it.
That's Christy Swanson's.
We're going to talk about Christy Swanson.
All right.
There's the mob scene we were talking about earlier, where they're all sitting at the table, and Ray is the name of the gangster, and he says, "Hey, the only power I believe comes out of the barrel of a gun, not from some jungle souvenirs." just another great line. But my favorite one, because it's so ridiculous, is the Phantom says it. And throughout the movie, there's a lot of times where they say, there's an old jungle saying. There's an old jungle saying. There's an old jungle saying. Old jungle saying says, and the worst old jungle saying is this. The Phantom goes, there's an old jungle saying, never point a gun at someone because it might go off. I'm like, that's an old jungle saying?
In the jungle. Yeah.
They say that? They say that there?
Sure. Yeah.
Never point a gun at someone?
time.
Because it just might go off? Okay. All right. So yours is the
It
history.
might be. It's the You nailed it. So, but that's interesting. Of course, it came from Drax.
Yeah, he's so good in this movie.
I would watch a spinoff of Drax. I want like the Joaquin Phoenix version of Joker, the first one, for Drax. I want to know where he came from and why. Because they could have. Do you think they were really counting on sequels to like?
It doesn't seem like it because they kill off Drax at the end and they kill off Kabai Sang. So like your two big bads are both dead. Like, in The Dark Knight, they knew we're coming back for the next one, so let's not kill the Joker, even though obviously they didn't end up using him because of Heath Ledger's tragic passing. But you never want to kill the bad guy outright if you don't think you're coming back. Because
unless you're Star Wars.
But also, I think if Tim Burton knew he was doing a second Batman, because I don't think that anyone knew that they were going to do another Batman, right? If he knew, I don't think he would have killed Jack Nicholson. Right? Even though that's a good ending for Jack.
They did intend to have, wasn't Billy Zane contracted for 3 Phantom movies? Weren't they planning? Everybody plans a trilogy, but
I think most likely, I don't know that, but I'm sure it's true.
Yeah. And then that did pan out. But the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, I just thought of it, was going back to we keep talking about how there's not a lot of backstory, but the movie not only opens with 30 seconds of exposition, but the real story, the backstory of the Phantom and how he carries on, it's his family that carries on for years and years. He doesn't even go into that story till 10 minutes before the movie's over. Like, this movie even waits to tell you the history of why he is who he is. Like, you get the whole movie and then he tells it to his lady. And even that's kind of just like, oh, this is how it happens. Everyone thinks I'm alive. And my pal over there that keeps calling me the ghost who walks, he knows.
He knows.
But we kind of all do our thing. Like, even this movie, just they're so loose with the why. It's just kind of, should we say something? Should we explain the backstory? Do it at the end, real quick. Before people leave.
Yeah. We just come on now.
But that's it too. By that time you're like, okay, that's funny that now they're doing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to ever hear it.
I actually liked I liked that little, what would you call it? It's not a graveyard, but it's like it's not a cemetery or mausoleum. I don't know what you call that, where it has all the Phantoms' little headstones on the wall.
Like, yeah. It's a little tribute, homage, a
little tribute, and I like how it's like, hey, this is the 10th Phantom. This was the 12th Phantom, and of course, Kit is the 21st Phantom. And I want to get into like a little plot hole about that in a second, but
it's like Kitchen, where they at the end of Hell's Kitchen they have the pictures of the all the different chefs that are on, and then they burn up when they get eliminated. That's what it is. It's the Hell's Kitchen wall of former Phantoms.
And we're going to get into a few more plot details here in a second because I have some questions for you. And then before we get into interview with Simon Wincer.
You have questions for me.
I do have questions for you. So let's go. Best shot fired. The most visually stunning moment or scene from the movie. Well, you go first. I'll let you go first.
Anything with the practical effects was good, which is most of this movie. I think when they started having lasers towards the end, it kind of looked cheesy. So I'll go back to that scene with the airplane and the horse because that was my favorite scene. I think everything about that visually, I bought it. I couldn't see like the lines of blue screen when the plane blew up. It looked real. I think in the scene with the truck on the rickety bridge, you can kind of tell when it was a model at some point, but that's kind of part of it as well. But I think that sequence and everything from start to finish just looks good.
For me, my favorite singular shot of the movie is towards the beginning of the film when he's chasing down the grave robbers or whatever you want to call them, the Sang Brotherhood Drax people. We see the Phantom's eyes, right? We see his belt and very Batman-esque.
Typical close-ups of him putting himself together, Rambo 3.
But the shot that I love is where he's on the horse, Devil as Wolf Dog is next to him, and we finally see the full Phantom, and he's on the white horse. galloping like over like I think a tree trunk or something, and the dog's right next to him. It's almost a little slow motion, and you're like, here's the guy. He's got a white horse, a white wolf, and he's dressed in purple. You know, the purple's never really explained either, other than that's what he was in the comics. But
yeah, it's because
it's an interesting choice, because like you would think if you're like a phantom is like a ghostly figure who you never know where he is. It's the ghost who walks, which is, by the way, the ghost who walks is such a badass nickname. You're the ghost who walks. Really cool. But you would think if you're the phantom and you're in a jungle, you'd be like a green guy, right?
You would think that, and you would think that he would move around at night. But the opening scene is just broad daylight in the middle of the woods, and that purple pops. He can't hide.
Purple
he
pops.
Has no purple pops. Watch your microphone on that one. Purple pops. He can't hide in the jungle. He stands out. He's a big old plum.
He's a big old plum, man. Now
he's the Professor Plum.
Before we get to our plot holes, rewind that. A moment you'd replay over and over and over again. Do you have a particular one from this movie, or not one that you would replay over and over?
I don't know if there's parts that I would replay to go, why? So it's not like a complimentary rewind. It's like when Catherine Zeta-Jones, who we haven't mentioned yet.
We're going to get into that,
yeah. She turns good. Spoiler for everybody. I guess it's way too late to say spoiler. We're telling you everything. She is the bad girl who really likes the Phantom really early. She's a horny bad girl with her crew full of women, and the second the Phantom shows up, she just lays a kiss on him, and he's having none of it. So good on you, Phantom, I guess. But and then she has a change of heart, and I think I did think about rewinding, like, did I miss why? But it's at that point I realized, it's a movie. So if anything, it's not a compliment why I would rewind certain things, but it's because I would think, did I miss why? And no, I did. It's fine.
Yeah, I would say I love the opening scene of this movie, just from the exposition until he saves the kid. I just love that little sequence. But
yeah,
let's get into plot holes here. The plot hole parade is, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, but I want to start with Catherine Zeta-Jones, because this isn't so much a plot hole as a huge Catherine Zeta-Jones, who, by the way, also was in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was in one of the early episodes. So this is before she really blows up, and we're gonna for entrapment, and we're gonna talk about everybody's kind of run. I want to go through their IMDb run here in a second, but she turns good for the worst reason ever. Is they're in the Devil's Vortex. They're about to go see Kabai Seng, who's the Pirate King, and love that sentence I just said. And one of the pirates hits on Christy Swanson, and Catherine Zeta-Jones stands up for her and says to her, "Us girls got to stick together." Right?
Right.
Which I guess kind of, sort of, a little bit makes some sense, because she is kind of this feminist icon in a way. Catherine Zeta-Jones' character, Sala, is she has a ship full of women, and it's very kind of pussy galore. Her pilots are all women, and it's a very womanly focused thing. But she just says, us girls got to stick together. And because Diana Palmer got hit on, Christy Swanson got hit on.
Yeah.
Now all this stuff I've been doing for the whole movie, I'm out. Bunch of male chauvinist pigs.
Don't like that. Don't like that. So if Christy Swanson had not been attractive, she never would have turned, because the pirate probably would have still hit on her. But yeah, it's that's going back to why I said, when did she get nice? Because I might have even missed it. It was that quick. Yeah, I don't understand her entire character. I don't understand what purpose she really has. I don't know if she was even needed in the movie. I mean, I would never want Catherine Zeta-Jones to not be in a movie, but it doesn't really serve much. I mean, in the end, she's not in the finale all that much. She just suddenly pops up like, "Hey, I'm your ride to get you back to." Yeah. I got the plane, and you're like, "Oh yeah, her. Forgot about her." Yeah, not a huge in a movie with underdeveloped characters. She's right up there.
She's very underdeveloped. You don't honestly, there could be a cut of this movie where she's cut out of it and you wouldn't miss anything in the movie. Honestly. And it's funny, her name's Sala in the film, is that like another Indiana Jones reference?
Oh yeah. Well,
You know?
I don't know if it's a character from the comic. Then it's
Yeah, I don't know if
Indiana
she's
Jones.
based on a
Maybe
comic.
Indiana Jones was named the character after that.
Very well could be. There's Indiana DNA all through this film. But Catherine Zeta, let's talk about her a little bit more for a second, because you could cut her out of this movie, and I don't think that it really changes anything that happens in the movie, other than she's the one, I guess, who kidnaps Christy Swanson's character. Which I love how Christy Swanson, when Sala and Catherine Zeta-Jones and her goons board this plane where they kidnap Christy Swanson's character. I love how, first things first, she's like, I'm looking for Diana Palmer. Where is she? No one's saying anything. She puts a gun to a woman's head. Christy Swanson gives herself up. But the thing that she's most trying to protect is this piece of paper that just has a symbol written on it. Right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing she's really trying to protect. Is she slips it in her boot. Sala likes the boot, so she takes them off and then finds it. But I just
her size.
just my size. Oh yeah. She now,
She even gives her crap about very Seinfeld like about where she gets her boots.
yeah. She is. Look, it's Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she is good in the role that she's given. I'm not saying she's bad. I like her in the movie. I just don't know if she's needed. I do love how like she shines up the Silver Skull with toothpaste, and it's like some just offline. Yeah, and then Treat Williams like toothpaste, really. But yeah, I mean, but it's This is 1996 Catherine Zeta-Jones, and may I say, a more beautifully striking woman. I mean, there's a few and far between in 96 Catherine Zeta-Jones. And this is, by the way, next to Christy Swanson, who's like nothing to sneeze at. We're talking Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We're talking, a very, very attractive woman, superficially speaking. But Catherine Zeta-Jones is like throwing 101 mile an hour fastball, and Christy Swanson's got, mid 90s going.
Yeah, I don't know. The Phantom, he seems to have chosen Christy Swanson just because it's like the first woman he's ever met. But then he also has the option of Catherine Zeta-Jones, and I don't know.
Doesn't go for it. He's not that kind of guy.
Especially because Catherine Zeta-Jones can be turned to the good side so easily that she's not bad. She's fine.
Yeah, she's
not really anything. She's not. She's fine.
Okay.
Doesn't have a lot of personality other than just she's definitely the bad,
gorgeous girl.
The bad gorgeous girl.
Yeah. Another couple plot holes. So Kit Walker's the 21st Phantom. Okay, and this is just kind of an unanswerable question, but he is the 21st Phantom. No daughters, like no daughter. There's never been a girl born in the Phantom lineage. We don't have a female Phantom ever.
There was maybe in the comic there's been a female Phantom.
In the comic there has been a female Phantom.
Yeah, but so far they've had all strapping boys
and just one boy. I think that they just go boom.
Well, they won and then that's it.
That's it.
Well, they're very into procreating because towards the end, I thought this was hilarious. When after he's given the backstory, the Phantom's given the backstory, pronouns. When he's been given the backstory to her, she goes, "So when you have a son, he'll take on the mantle." And he goes, "Yes." And then he looks at her, and it's like it's not like a romantic look. It's we need to breed right now. I have found a woman, and I know how this works. We need to breed. And even when his ghost father, who is he a ghost? Is he in his head? We don't know. He's just kind of he appears. His dad, who also from the math, I think from his they put the year he was alive and died, and I think I'm bad at math, but I think he was supposed to be like 50, and the actor who plays him is not 50.
No,
unless it was a hard 50 maybe, but he even says, well, go get it. Or he says something, his delivery is odd too. Like basically he's like, well, go breed. It's not like go have a romance. It's like go have a child so you can retire.
Yeah. the
Very
ghost
practical.
the ghost dad is interesting. You know, the 20th Phantom, Kit Walker
Yeah.
Sr., I think is his name, or I don't
He
know.
pops in for advice, I guess.
Yeah.
Doesn't really give much good advice.
Patrick McGoohan is his name, by the way. He was 67 at the
Okay.
time they were filming this movie.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't really ever really serve too much of a purpose other than being like the angel on the shoulder, I guess. Just like
It's funny in the cab.
it's funny in the cab, and I want to talk about the cab in
Yeah.
a second. So yeah, no daughters in the bloodline. Here's another plot hole inconsistency. And this is a great scene also. I could have used this as my rewind that scene to play over and over because Xander Drax invites this librarian, I think, to his office because they've been reading about these books and I can't remember the exact details, but he brings him into his office and he's like, "Hey, you're not telling anybody what I've been talking to you about, right? You haven't been saying anything." He's like, No, I haven't. He goes, "Okay, glad you cleared that up. Oh, and can you take a look under this microscope? You know, there's something I want to get your professional opinion on it." He's like, "Oh, of course." And he says, "I can't see anything." And then he's like, "Oh, just turn the focus knobs." And when he turns the focus knobs, I guess we're to presume, because we see Drax playing with it earlier, that these little razor blades almost shoot out of it.
It's got little knives that when you turn it, knives pop up from the microscope and poke out your eyeballs.
And so we hear that done, and he screams.
Yeah.
But what we see in the frame is a unfocused microscope, and then as it focuses, it says "liar," right?
Right.
When it focuses, how do we know? How does the professor see it say "liar" when the knives went through it? So how do we know it says "liar"? We're seeing it through his eyes.
Yeah. So he's got the Drax has set up that it's going to say liar, like he's, I guess, lying to whoever he's conned into sticking his eyeballs into this thing. But first of all, you're not going to be able to see through it because the knives are in the way.
Yes.
So first of all, and then when the knives, I guess, do they come out when
then
they
you can focus
pop into your eyeballs? And then, but now you've got knives in your eyes. So it's mainly for him, I guess, like his little, like, I should have it say something.
Yes.
But even then, it should say, like, I don't know if it should be liar. It should be like, fooled you, or, something.
Got him.
Like, gotcha. Yeah. Now you're blind.
Now you're blind. Blinded.
Yeah, now you're blind. And you can't see this.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and I don't know. Like if I were turning the focus knobs and I even felt anything like start to poke, I'd probably stop.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? What is that? And he goes full on. He's a little aggressive with the knob turning, and it's a very like pre-Jigsaw Saw kind of little trap. Like you can see, look into the microscope, but you're going to be blind.
Exactly. Do you have any plot holes you want to go over? I have a couple more, but do you have any?
I gave up on plot holes.
It's a lot of them.
For sure. There's a lot, but it became like that's part of the charm, I guess. And to go back to what you're talking about, I was thinking more about what you're saying, what would I rewind? I would like to watch the beginning of the movie again, because now that I know I'm like on board with the tone, I'd like to watch the very beginning again to appreciate that scene more, with the bridge and the kid and everything, because I don't think before I was going, I'm gonna have to go on this podcast and go, not good, Brad. Episode 1, but luckily it didn't happen.
So there's a couple other, like I say, plot holes, inconsistencies, questions that I have. I love in the beginning of the movie where they're in the cave and they're getting the gold skull, which is like apparently just the easiest thing to get. And then the skeleton comes alive, strangles one of their guys, and then he just like, all right, leave him and take all the gold. No one here is going to miss it.
Thank you. Yeah, so they sneak in. For those who haven't seen it, they sneak into this cave and they're looking for the skull. And the guy who's not Casey Sabisco, how do you pronounce his name? Back to the Future tie-in right there. Him and Billy Zane both play Biff's thugs.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your Back to the Future connection. There is a Clue connection too, by the way, which we'll get to, I guess. But then a skeleton comes to life and chokes out the bad guy and kills him. But they also don't explain was that real? Because at first I thought the bad guy was like goofing around. I thought he was like going up to the skeleton and be like, "Oh, he's got me." But no, the skeleton was alive. But that's the only time there's ever like magic,
Right?
because it's not really a supernatural movie other than the skulls.
The skulls are
lasers come out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but are they guards? Do they have skeleton guards to protect them? And if they are, they suck. They're not good guards because he doesn't move. The guy walks into the skeleton basically, and then he doesn't go after the other guys, the guard skeleton. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. I totally forgot about the weird skeleton that comes to life and kills them, and they're like,
Yeah.
job's a job.
Who cares?
Moving on.
The James Remar plays Quill in this movie, and here's my other plot hole is how hard do you have to punch somebody with a ring in order to make a perfect scar of a skull on their face?
It would have to be like really hot too, I would think. Kind of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he gets the burns the medallion on a tote. That, and for it to be there forever. I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a hard.
I don't even think you'd get like an indentation on, even if you bite your own arm hard, you'll have teeth marks in it. I used to do that as a kid in class when I was bored. I'd like bite my arm and be like, "Hey, Jaws," and then eventually that goes away. But yeah, he had a skull indentation because he got punched by the Phantom while wearing his ring, and then he forever has the skull imprinted on his skin.
It's a hard skull. And then my final plot hole is Cabai saying at the very end, after Treat Williams is trying to get all three skulls together, the two I have here and the one you have up there. Cabai saying's like, well, it's useless without the fourth skull. And then Xander's like, what do you mean the fourth skull? There is no fourth skull. And then we find out that the Phantom Ring is the fourth skull. But my question is, how come there's never a mention of that in the books where they find the information about the skulls of Tuganda? There's no talk of it ever. And then Billy Zane realizes, oh, I've worn it all my life for protection, But
I didn't know what it was until just now. But it doesn't look anything like the skulls that you have, because yours are quite large and mine is a ring. Why did they make 3 gold, silver, jade, and then 1 portable?
It doesn't make much sense.
Like the one that you have lost in your very own studio.
Yes, I have it somewhere.
Not wise. Yeah, you don't even know. You have the 4th ring, and it's who knows where.
I have the 4th skull somewhere. So that was the plot hole too. Okay, a few more categories before we get to our interview. I want to throw this out. So this is a little segment that I like to call, is this, people are calling me. It's annoying. It's a little segment I like to call, is this true trivia? And it's really like, who cares if it's true or not? Because I'm just reading off of IMDb.
Sure.
But there are some interesting things that I did read about this movie that I wanted to let you know. So did you recognize where the Palmer Mansion was? Like what real life location that was?
Of course not. I have no idea what that is. I can't believe you think that I would know that was the Playboy Mansion.
Yes, it is the Playboy Mansion. The Hugh Hefner Playboy Mansion, which has been in many a film, including Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And
so was Quill.
And so was Quill. I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, James Remar was in that movie in a deleted scene, I think. Few other things. When filming, Billy Zane had a habit of running out to buy sushi wearing his Phantom costume. Really just an interesting fact.
Sure.
In the comics, the Phantom wears 2 rings, one on each hand. On his right hand, he wears the skull ring that is most associated with him. It is the ring that burns a skull impression into those who he punches. There we go.
Okay.
And on his
magic. That makes sense.
And on his left hand, he wears what he calls the seal of the Phantom. The Phantom gives the seal to those he forms close friendships with, when he is then honor bound to help anyone with the seal when they are in some sort of trouble.
Okay. That's like you with your Gilmore Media hats. You
Right.
give those out to, like, I have one.
The movie was originally going to be the first of a trilogy. However, after it bombed at the box office, it was canceled. So there you go.
Yeah.
Several scenes developing the romance between Kit Walker and Diana Palmer were shot in Thailand, but director Simon Wincer reportedly ditched them because he wanted the film to be more fast-paced.
Which you appreciate the runtime, so that's good.
I do appreciate the runtime, but you didn't really love the lack of romance. He's just like, oh, I love her because I love her.
Yeah, she's the girl I met. I guess. But again, it's that kind of movie where it's fine.
Yes. I mean, it works, right?
Yeah, it's just that movie because.
Here you go. Bruce Campbell and Kevin Smith were considered for the role of the Phantom.
Actor Kevin Smith, not
that Kevin Smith. Yes.
That'd be great. Silent Bob is the Phantom.
At the time of the film's release, nearly all Phantom comic strip stories had been written by the character's original creator, Lee Falk. Lee Falk, like we talked about, wrote until 1999. The advertising campaign for this movie was a little bit interesting. It had a Got Milk tie-in, which is
very 90s.
That's what I was going to say. That's very 1990s. Having the Got Milk campaign. Now here we go.
Mustache?
In 2008, Paramount Pictures considered creating a sequel to The Phantom with Billy Zane, Christy Swanson, and Catherine Zeta-Jones returning in the role. But instead of doing the sequel, a reboot of The Phantom was in the works called The Phantom Legacy that was going to be produced and star Sam Worthington for the main role, which is very 2008, 2009-ish.
Yeah, they were trying with him for a long time.
Yes, by 2014, the film plans had fallen through, and they have not made a Phantom sequel. Now, there was a made-for-television sci-fi science fiction channel, a movie of the Phantom that was released in 2014 that you can go watch if you want to see more of the Ghost Who Walks. There was also a series of serials that are available on YouTube from the early 20th century that you can watch if you want more of the Ghost Who Walks. We're coming here to our...
I'll tell you this real quick. Be careful if you search for the Phantom of 2021, because there is a documentary called The Phantom, but this documentary follows Carlos de Luna, who was arrested in 1983 for the murder of a woman and protested his innocence until he was executed, stating that another Carlos had committed the crime. So that is a documentary called The Phantom. Do not accidentally watch that if you're looking for the 1996 The Phantom. And I alluded to, just real quick, trivia, there is a tie-in to Clue, which, just in case anybody from Clue, the movie podcast, followed us to this podcast, the director, who we're about to listen to, Simon Wincer, directed a movie in 1985 called Daryl, which came out before Clue, but starred Michael McKean and Colleen Camp.
There you go.
Clue fame. So there is your tie-in. There is a tie-in to Back to the Future.
Billy Zane
and Casey's
Uh-huh.
And then there's your tie-in to Clue. Our worlds collide.
Our worlds collide again. Now, here's a couple things, and then we'll get to our interview and then final thoughts. Quick question. I'm going to ask you this for every movie we watch. Is this movie better with Jack Nicholson?
Yes.
What role?
He'd be a good Drax, even though Treat did great. But can you imagine him saying "unbelievable" at the end? Although I don't think he would have. He would have played it totally different. He could have played his dad. He could have played.
Ooh, I like Jack as his dad.
Interesting. Yeah. Or he could have played. That's it. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Not the Phantom.
All right, and then we're gonna go to this. I call this the timeline / peak of their powers. Is this the peak for Billy Zane?
No, Titanic is his peak.
I think Titanic is his peak too.
He's good. You hated him at that.
Yeah, you did not enjoy him.
That was a good wig.
I mean, look at his timeline. So his first role ever is in Back to the Future. Not a bad run there. And then he's in.
Have you seen his audition video because he auditioned for Marty?
Of course.
Of course you have. Who am I talking to?
He was in Back to the Future 2 playing Match again. But like let me roll through kind of around this era. So he did Poetic Justice, where he plays a man named Brad. He did Tombstone. Tombstone's cool. Not a lot of ones that you know. Then he did a Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Then he did The Phantom, Danger Zone, Titanic, Pocahontas 2, which is a voice role, Zoolander, and kind of a bunch of stuff that you haven't heard of ever since. A lot of stuff.
He was very prominent in Zoolander, that's for sure. He played himself.
Yes, and he's in Zoolander 2, obviously the sequel, and then he's actually playing Marlon Brando coming up in a movie called Waltzing with Brando. So that should be interesting. But I think peak of his powers, is Titanic. That's the biggest that he gets. Christy Swanson.
Sure, because she kind of vanished too. Wasn't she in a movie with Charlie Sheen, The Chase?
The Chase, I believe you're correct. Yes, she was in The Chase. But here's her run. Here's what I think her best run was: Buffy the Vampire Slayer, then The Chase, then The Phantom, and then she was in Big Daddy. Big Daddy might have been peak of her powers.
Oh, yeah.
Adam Sandler, 99. It's about as big as it gets.
Yeah.
She was also in the television show Psych, in a recurring role that I like her in.
Okay. Psych is great.
But yeah, I mean, and I got to be honest with you, like peak of her powers, she was a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous woman in this movie.
She has a very great scene at Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's the one that says, "My best friend, sisters, brothers." Those are the guy who was going with the kid who met this girl who did that Ferris passed out of 31 flavors last night. Pretty serious.
Peak of her powers timeline for Catherine Zeta-Jones. Obviously not peak of her powers.
Not this. No, I would say, she's good in Zorro. She's good in, not Ocean's 12 because that was terrible.
I think Chicago, right? Isn't Chicago peak of her powers?
Of course, Chicago. Yeah, you're right. Forgot about Chicago. Yeah, definitely.
But listen to this. I'm just gonna go for a little under 10-year run. Okay, for her. It goes The Phantom.
High Fidelity.
The Phantom, The Mask of Zorro, Entrapment, The Haunting, High Fidelity, Traffic, America's Sweetheart, Chicago, Intolerable Cruelty, which is not a good movie, The Terminal, which I don't really love, Ocean's 12.
Oh, I like The Terminal.
You like The Terminal?
I did.
Okay, Ocean's 12, then The Legend of Zorro. That's a pretty good run.
Yeah.
Pretty good run for Catherine Zeta. Okay, a couple more. Peak of their powers for Treat Williams. I think this is his top, right?
Yeah.
He never had another really huge film role after this. I did love
TV
him.
After this?
Say what?
TV?
He did a lot of television.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I love about this. In 1996, he did The Phantom, and he played Michael Ovitz in The Late Shift, the HBO movie.
Oh, Late Shift. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Late Shift is great.
But when you look at his run here, it's The Phantom, then he did The Devil's Own. I've never seen that. Deep Rising. I've never seen that. The Substitute 2, School's Out. Never seen that. The Deep End of the Ocean. Never seen that. The Substitute 3, Critical Mask. The Substitute, Failure is Not an Option. What is up with The Substitute?
Ironically.
Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous. What Happens in Vegas. So he had a couple of rom-coms there that came up. And then I don't know anything else that he was in after that. So I think this might be peak of his powers. Okay. Couple more. We haven't talked about this guy yet. John Tenney. John Tenney, who plays Jimmy Wells in the movie, who's kind of the annoying guy who's hitting on Christy Swanson's character the whole time.
Oh, right.
Also better known as Mr. Terry Hatcher for about a decade. Is this John Tenney peak of his powers? I don't know if you're a big John Tenney guy.
I'm afraid you'd have to give me some other credits.
Okay, check this out. Here's his run. Tombstone, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Lassie, Free Willy 2, Nixon, The Phantom, Fools Rush In, which is the one with Salma Hayek and Matthew Perry.
Sure, I love that movie.
And then after that, nothing I've ever seen. So
Who's Fools? Well, Fools Rush In. I'll say I guess that's it because I
Yeah,
like the movie.
and you know what? He plays a man named Jeff. Go figure.
Oh, he's he's the funny friend
Of Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry. Okay, yeah, then that's his peak for sure.
Okay, three more. John Copadice. John Copadice plays Al the cabbie in this movie, which I want to also say we need to say the John Copadice Award every movie is like the best that guy because he's in a lot.
That guy.
Let me give you his run here. Wall Street, Family Business, Internal Affairs, Gremlins 2, Seinfeld episode The Revenge. He plays the laundromat.
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah. And then he's in Ace Ventura.
He's got that good. Does he got a cigar in that? Because I pictured him with a cigar while watching Kramer try to.
I think he's got a cigar.
Cement.
But he's also in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Naked Gun 33 1/3. He's in Speed. And then Independence Day, Enemy of the State. And then that's kind of his run. CSI, he was in.
He just passed away
last
recently.
week. Yeah, he passed away last week. So rest in peace to the Copadice.
December 30th, 2024.
James Remar.
83.
James Remar. Is this peak of his powers?
Yes.
Okay.
Who's James Remar?
James Remar. He was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We were just talking about him.
Oh, yeah, Quill.
Quill.
Sure. Yeah, he's fine.
I almost say that his peak of his powers is he's in 48 Hours. He's the bad guy in 48 Hours.
Oh, okay.
I kind of think that's bigger. But look, let's look at his run. 79, he was in The Warriors. Then he did 48 Hours in 82. And Drugstore Cowboy, not a really well-known movie. I'm trying to see like the ones that people know. Miracle on 34th Street, Renaissance Man, Judge Dredd, The Quest, The Phantom, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Psycho, the remake, Too Fast, Too Furious, The Girl Next Door, Pineapple Express, X-Men First Class, Transformers Dark of the Moon, Django Unchained.
He's working.
The Saint, Speed Kills, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Oppenheimer, Megalopolis. I don't know. I don't think this is peak of his powers. I think that he's running. I think maybe Django and X-Men First Class around the same time. That's a pretty good run.
Pretty good.
Pineapple Express, all within a 4-year period. It's probably peak of his powers. And then finally, the director of our film, Simon Wincer. Is this peak of his powers?
Oh, yes. I don't know. If you're a big Paul Hogan fan, then no. Because he did Lightning Jack and he did Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles. But also if you're a big Tom Selleck fan. Because he
Quickly
did some
Down Under.
TV Westerns and with Tom Selleck. So he seems to like the Westerns. So if you're a fan of the Westerns, then I'm going to guess those are probably his peaks. But I would say as far as commercial, Free Willy was probably his peak because that was pretty big.
Free Willy was a huge movie.
90s. I had a Michael Jackson song. You can't top that.
The movie cost $20 million to make it and made $150 million. I mean, it's a huge movie.
Yeah.
So that's peak of his powers. Okay, well, you know what? Before I hear if you would recommend this movie and watch it again, Jeff, we're actually going to go to Simon Wincer with some words about his career and the making of 1996's The Phantom. Here he is. So the film that I also have to ask about is 1996's The Phantom. Now, this movie has garnered, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's garnered one of the bigger cult followings of any film from the 1990s. I think there are more fans of The Phantom now than perhaps there ever have been. This is a movie that comes up constantly in conversations as just almost a movie that you could put on just to have a good time. How did The Phantom and the script in the film, how did it enter your orbit? Where did this start for you with this movie?
Again, I was literally finishing a film I'd done for Disney called Operation Dumbo Drop. And I got a call one evening on the eve of a trip to London to record the score with the composer David Newman for Operation Dumbo Drop, and it was Sherry Lansing, who was head of Paramount, and John Goldwyn, who was head of their motion picture division, and they said, "Look, we have a film called The Saint with the Val Kilmer that Phil Noyce is going to do, but it's fallen through because of Val's availability. We need something to fill in its slot, which is early June next year." And this was, it would have been September or October. We need it by June. It's a film called The Phantom. Do you know anything about The Phantom? I said, well, yeah, I grew up with the comic. It was very popular in Australia. And they said, could you... And I said, look, I'm going to London tomorrow. They said, can you come to the studio on your way to the airport and have a meeting? And I said, sure, yeah. So literally the hire car stops at Paramount on the way to LAX, and I go and meet with Sherry and John, and they said, we'd like to offer you the film. Here's the script, we hope you like it and you'll take it on. And so I read it on the plane going to London, and it was written by a wonderful writer called Jeffrey Boehm, and Jeffrey had written the third Indiana Jones movie, one of my favorites, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and which was the one with Sean Connery, which was an absolute
the best of all five of them, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and so it had a very good pedigree, and I think they'd tried to get it off the ground once before, but for one reason and another, it didn't happen, and so. I read the script, obviously, and said, yeah, I'd love to do it, and came back and literally dived into it. And look, I was surrounded by a wonderful group of people, production designer Paul Peters, and my partner then, and now my wife Liz was the art director. And, we shot in Los Angeles, and we shot in Thailand, and we shot studio scenes in Australia because the US dollar was strong in Australia, and we could get a lot on the screen for a lot less money, and so that's sort of how it came about. It's a beautiful looking film, and just rich locations, beautiful production design. New York in the 30s and all that kind of stuff. It was fun to do for everybody. The only person that was attached when I was off the film was Billy Zane, was already attached to it, and we had a great relationship, and we worked together, going through the script scene by scene, and I convinced Paramount that the best way to make this movie would be to shoot the exterior American scenes in Los Angeles. And we did a lot on the Universal backlot, built this huge New York street, and then used some wonderful Art Deco interiors as well. And then we'd shoot all the Phantom stuff in Thailand, which I'd just done Dumbo Drop, and we loved it there, and a great jungle and good crews and all that sort of stuff. And then we could do the studio scenes much more economically by shooting them in Warner Roadshow Studios in Australia, which we did, and it was a challenging shoot because it was a very big movie, but I was surrounded by great people, and everyone delivered in a big way, particularly the art department. They did a spectacular job.
It is such a fun, like you said, it's a fun movie, but it's a really awesome movie to look at. Just like you said, New York in the 30s. In the film, it's the Bengala jungle, but the jungles of Thailand, and then even in the towards the end of the film when they go to the Devil's Vortex and they're in the cave with all the pirate imagery, and Kabai Sang is there. Just everything looked very, very comic-y as it was supposed to, I'm assuming, but also just full of color and life in almost every frame of that movie.
Yeah. Look, I had a wonderful cinematographer called David Burr, who's an Australian cameraman, and I'd never worked with David before, but none of my regular guys were available, and David had done one very small feature. It was a film called Race the Sun, but his commercial reel was spectacular, and I had to convince Paramount that he was the guy, and I had a wonderful producer in Alan Ladd Jr. who had used to run MGM when I'd done Quigley and Harley Davidson there, and eventually we got the green light for David Burr, and he did a beautiful job, shooting it with a great crew and various people that I'd worked with before, but never David, and he did a wonderful job. And Paul Peters, the production designer, and then Liz, my wife, she was his art director, and she did the Australian sections, and Paul did Thailand and Los Angeles, but they were a great team, and because we had huge sets, but they were all fun to do, and we sort of played the film, I guess, with a twinkle in the eye, if you like, because that was the sort of comic book feeling that I wanted to capture.
And you did. Now, you said you were familiar with the comic series as you were a fan of it. How, when you take on a project like this that has this pre-existing mythology, and the Phantom has been around since before the Superman was even around. It predates Superman. It's really one of the first superheroes. So you have decades and decades and decades of source material to go off of. How much pressure do you feel to do justice to the mythology, but also know I need to execute the movie that I want to make?
I suppose that's a bit of both. I got to know Lee Falk, who was the creator of the Phantom, and obviously used to illustrate it. And he was still around then. Lovely, lovely man. Lived in New York, because I'd grown up with the comic, it was very close to me. It was a very popular comic book in Australia, very popular in the 50s particularly, and it's still a strip in some of the newspapers in Australia now, whereas it was never that big in America, I don't think, But how the film begins, I think it begins with the super for those that came in late, which is how the comic used to start. So you could pick up the story, and then I told briefly, the history, if you like, of the Phantom, just in a very brief montage at the beginning of the film. I felt we had to honour the character, and it was up to me and my team to deliver it.
When it comes to casting, Christy Swanson, obviously Treat Williams, Catherine Zeta-Jones, who hadn't had the career that she would go on to have at the time, this early on in her career, all phenomenal. Yeah. But I really feel like Treat Williams brought the Xander Trax character off the page and beyond. He felt like the quintessential comic villain.
Absolutely. He was wonderful. We modeled his look on Howard Hughes, that sort of, he looked great. He looked great in the wardrobe. He really took the part on with relish. And he became a wonderfully good friend. I was absolutely devastated when he was killed last year in a motorbike accident, just because he stayed with us in Australia, and we got to know his wife and family, and wonderful guy, and that sort of resurrected his career, I think. But he was, I thought he was fantastic. A story about Catherine, I'd just worked with her on an episode of Young Indiana Jones where she and another unknown actor called Daniel Craig was starring in this episode. Ironically, we shot it in Turkey. It was about the Australian light horse and the charge at Beersheba, which I addressed in The Light Horseman. And Catherine and I really hit it off. She was great, lovely lady, very modest, and boy, when we actually screen tested both Christy on film at Paramount, and Christy and Catherine, and I remember sitting at the screening of these tests for Sherry Lansing and Laddie and everybody, and Sherry just said, "This girl's going to be a star. She's a star." And that was talking about Catherine. She saw it then.
She had a certain quality about her that just, she jumps off the screen, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to ask, so when it comes to production design on the Phantom, we talked a lot about the exteriors and how the scenes looked, but some of the, whether it be the props, I guess is the word for them on the film, were so iconic, including the skulls of Tuganda, the one of silver, the one of gold, the one of jade. Were those the ones that we saw on screen? Was that the first run of them? Did you see them, come off out of the property manager's department and go, these are it?
No, they were created again, designed by Paul Peters, a wonderful production designer at the art department. Did a great job. And one of my favourite sets is Treat Williams' office at Xander Drax's office in New York. It's a beautiful Art Deco set, absolutely stunning, and every detail, the sconces, and the little deadly microscope on the desk where the guy has to look in and, he gets his eye.
And then the screen goes from fuzzy to clear, just saying liar. To me, I'm not joking with you when I get into debates with people about the great comic villains brought to the cinematic screen. I feel like Xander Drax should be discussed more, just for that particular scene alone. And then even there's a small moment, and I wanted to ask you this as a director, if this was an improv or if this was in the script from Treat Williams. There's the scene where they're in the boardroom. I think he's going over the plan with the same brotherhood. And one of the gentlemen says he doesn't want to do it, and he lets him leave and then throws the spear in his back. When he goes to take the spear out of his back, he notices that he's now chipped his wall a little bit and does this little motion with his hand. Was that it?
That was Treat. Yeah.
That was Treat. It was but it was an improv, but it felt so like what the character would do. This is a man who's also evil, but is very much about appearance and about the finer things in life. And the fact that he would be upset that he just killed somebody, but he chipped his wall. I mean,
Yeah. No, Treat was, looked great in all the outfits, the wardrobe, everything. He relished, and most actors relish a part like that, but he happened to nail it. I just was going through some old stuff the other day, and there was a picture of him, and he just looked so fantastic in that role,
So it's actually funny. I tell people this story too. I was born in the early 90s, and Treat Williams was actually a big actor at the time in the 90s, as you mentioned, and that was going to be my original name. My mother was going to name me Treat after Treat Williams, and so now every time I see a movie with Treat Williams, I feel like there's a certain kinship I have to him because of that.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about Treat. We were doing a TV movie for Showtime, and we were shooting in Israel. It was a true story about an American businessman who got caught in Saudi Arabia and flew himself out in a box. But playing opposite Treat was an American actor called Stephen Lang, who many people will know, of course, because he was the baddie in Avatar. A wonderful actor and a wonderful guy. And our very first day's filming, we were filming supposedly on an oil rig, but it was actually a gas rig, which looks exactly the same. And, and we're in Tel Aviv, and you know where this bloody thing was. It was literally on the border of Gaza. The guy said, "Don't worry about that, and this is what to do if something happens." And so anyway, Stephen comes out of the trailer, he's in overalls, and he's got a scarf and a hard hat. And Treat looked at him and said, "Stephen, you look like one of the village people."
Oh man, that must have been an interesting shoot to be there in Tel Aviv, close to the border. I mean,
it actually wasn't. There was another scene where we're right up on the Lebanese border in a town called Arco, which is, I suppose, a more Arab town. And Treat's filming a scene in the reception of this little hotel where he's just arrived, and he's on. We're actually rolling. He's on the phone, and suddenly there's an enormous explosion outside, and he looks and said, "Should I stop now?" We go outside, and what you see is the Iron Dome at work. Somebody had fired a rocket, and the Iron Dome had destroyed it. It's a terrifying part of the world, and that was. Yeah, that would have been 1986 or 87 or something like that. It's still going on. It's so sad.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Very sad situation for everybody over there in that part of the world. Just awful, and a beautiful part of the world. My wife's Lebanese, and I see pictures of Lebanon and how beautiful it is, and how beautiful Israel is, and how beautiful just parts of the Middle East in general are, and it's just a shame, that that's still going on now.
After how many hundreds of years?
Yeah.
After hundreds of years, that's so silly.
I would hope that people, cooler heads would prevail in such a situation. But to go back to the Phantom, real quickly. So Billy Zane was already attached, but you had to have been very thrilled with Billy Zane being attached, because to me, I know he worked out all year to get ready for it and to be in the perfect shape. I mean, a very handsome man. He kind of jumps off the screen as a prototypical superhero. And I felt like he delivered, all of his line deliveries were done with this almost modesty and humility that about him that almost made the character endearing, the Phantom. And I thought he just did such a wonderful job.
Yeah, no, Billy was great. I think what he had to capture was the fact that he had been, this character had been college educated and grown up in the right way in the US and all that, and then takes over the mantle from his late father, and so it goes on. No, Billy was great. He's got a good voice. It looks great, as you say, physically, and he was. Billy was great. He used to drive us crazy occasionally because, I'd say to my assistant director, Bob, yeah, where's Billy? Oh, he's just pumping up. He's just pumping up, getting, and are you pumped up, Billy? Yeah, come on. He'd work out right up until the cameras rolled, In fact, Patrick McGowan, who played Dad, he used to roll his eyes a bit, but he was a wonderful actor, and I'd known him from a TV series when I was a kid called Prisoner, which he created and directed many and starred in. It was great.
There's a few things that I wanted to ask you before we wrap it. Again, thank you so much for your time regarding the Phantom. Was it true that the Palmer household that we see, the uncle who is the head of the newspaper in the movie, a Dave Palmer, Uncle Dave, is that the Playboy Mansion?
It is indeed.
Okay, so
it was the Playboy. It was literally our first week of shooting, and in fact, I've got a photo of me and Hugh Hefner and Christy Swanson chatting outside the Playboy Mansion. So, that was Playboy Mansion, because it needed to have that sort of Hampton sort of look, and it was very conveniently located in the heart of Beverly Hills. And so when Dinah drives up in her Woody car, that's the location. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great.
Hugh happened to be a fan of the Phantom. He remembered the comic very much.
Oh, so he probably enjoyed the fact that his house was being used in the film.
Yeah.
And then two more things on the Phantom. There was a serial done early on, a serial version of the Phantom. Did you look at any of that for any sort of reference, or did you say, that was this project, I'm looking at the script here and kind of crafting my own vision?
I didn't even know there was a serial version. I think it had to come together so quickly because of, we had to fill this slot that it was literally got back from recording score for a Dumbo Drop, and the final mix, and bang, just leapt into the Phantom at 100 miles an hour, and didn't draw breath until we finished, basically. I think we finished, the film was delivered only 2 weeks before it actually went into the theaters.
And they don't do things like that anymore, really, where you have to rush into a production and I remember even one of the great movies of all time, Back to the Future. If they didn't finish it by a certain date, they weren't going to release the movie. I mean, that's just how they did things back in the day. Now, when the movie ended, there's kind of this the end of the movie, you're not sure if Christy Swanson and Billy Zane's characters, if they end up together or not. It's kind of left open-ended. A lot of fans of the Phantom have always theorized that was meant to leave the door open for a potential sequel. Was there ever at any time prior to the movie's release an idea of continuing this story on, or did you see it as a one-shot?
No, I think there was an idea of it continuing on, but obviously it was going to depend on how it did at the box office, and it just didn't do well, sadly. And I remember we had a premiere screening at the Directors Guild one Sunday morning, so families could come, and everybody was there. Sherry Lansing, who was married to Billy Friedkin, who was a favourite director of mine, and all of Treat and Christy and Catherine and all the cast, and and all the Paramount executives, and the screening went really well, and people loved it and clapping and having a great time. And Sherry gathered all her executives around afterwards and said, "Guys, this film opens on Friday. What are you going to do? No one knows about it. It's a great movie." But it was sort of too late. But anyway, that's the way it goes. But I'm certainly very proud of the film. It's a beautiful film to look at, and lovely, really, terrific cast.
Beautiful film, beautiful cast. Like you said, it should have been much bigger at the time that it was, but there's publicity, there's marketing, there's all kinds of things that go into it that are out of the director's hands. But as far as your job, you nailed it out. As we say in the States, you hit it out of the park. That ball hasn't stopped yet. It's still going and going and going, and it's continued to go on. Are you surprised that it's gained this cult following now over the years? Because so many people now discuss this movie more than they ever have.
That's it surprised me initially, but it sort of kept going. So for example. Remember Roger Ebert, the film critic?
Of course, yes. Ebert and Roper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert. Well, Roger Ebert's review begins with, "This is one of the finest looking..."
Went wrong. Please try again.
Oh, shush. Siri came to life for some reason. Sorry.
She does that.
I'll just mute her. Roger Ebert's review began with something like, "This is one of the finest looking movies I've ever seen." And he talks about the beautiful cinematography and the colors. And it was absolutely gorgeous to look at, One thing David Burr, the cinematographer, and I decided to do, we would use apart from normal daylight filtration, we'd use no trick filters or, pre-wash negatives or all that stuff that people were doing then. We just wanted to go, because the jungle settings were so rich, the American scenes were so rich, and the sets were going to be so rich. We just wanted them to look as they were, without tricking them up or doing this or doing that, technically.
Well, when was the last time you've seen the movie?
I saw it fairly recently. The reason being that in my home theatre, but because there's a German film writer at the moment writing a book about my career, and he's interviewed me about every one of my movies, so I've had to revisit them, which has been an interesting experience because, some of the early stuff you look at it and you go, "Oh, did I do that?" And then you go, "Oh, wow, did I do that?" It's been an interesting experience reviewing, the body of my work, and he's talked about every single project I've ever made. So it's been fascinating and interesting to revisit them all.
Well, your movies and shows and all the things you've directed have impacted generations and thousands, if not millions and millions of people the world around, from Australia all the way here in Houston, Texas. And there's an old jungle saying that you shouldn't beat your idols, but I'm really happy that we've been able to share this hour with one another and have the conversation. And Simon, thank you so much for taking the time. Truly, truly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. It's been great fun.
All right, Jeff, you heard from the man himself. Yes. We've talked a lot about this movie. My final question to you: would you recommend or watch this movie ever again?
Those are two different questions.
Yes, answer them both.
I will answer both of them. I will not choose one. I would watch it again. I would love to watch it with you because you were very giddy just talking about it. So I want to experience it through Brad Gilmore's passion of the Phantom. Would I recommend it? It would have to be, I don't know if I'd recommend it. It would have to, a conversation would have to come with it. I'd have to say, yes, you should watch the Phantom. Keep in mind, don't be looking for a movie that explains anything. I think we've kind of hit home during this entire podcast that don't be looking for why. Just enjoy it as it's definitely a PG movie. That helps. I didn't know that going in. And it's a movie that things happen because. And if you're okay with that, then just enjoy and watch kind of what we were doing in 96.
Is it a movie is it one of those movies where you could have it on? You could just have it on and it'd be okay? Like if you're doing other stuff around the house, is it a have it on movie?
Yes, because I was really paying close attention to it. One, because we were doing this, but two, because I was like, why? And then when I caught on, oh, you don't have to pay that close attention. Then you could kind of wander around. But no, I don't think it's that kind of movie. I think you should sit and watch it because there's a lot in the action scenes, especially. There's a lot going on, and you might miss something. So I would say that I think it's fun to watch. It's light. It's a good. It might even be a good like sick day movie where you're just like, ugh.
I think it is a good sick day.
Not feeling
movie.
well and just pop it on and just want to feel better, or even like you just kind of if you're down, life got you down, pop on the Phantom because he's fun. He's like nothing bothers the Phantom.
No.
Yeah, he's like, hey, there's a boat full of women. Huh, interesting. And then he goes on.
Nobody says no to the Phantom.
Nobody says no to the Phantom.
That's what he says.
Except audiences in 1996.
Yeah. But can I also say, Billy Zane, I'm a little bit shocked his career wasn't, I mean, he has a good career, you know, a decent career. I'm surprised it wasn't bigger. Because like when you look at him in this movie,
was a shot.
He was so handsome, chiseled,
Yeah.
charisma.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised he didn't become a bigger deal. People know Billy Zane, but like, I mean, I think at this point people were expecting Clooney, Pitt, Cruise levels of you know A-list celebrity.
Yeah.
Didn't happen for him.
Not for everybody.
Didn't happen for him. But handsome son of a gun. Handsome son of a gun, and I love 1996's The Phantom. Jeff, have you selected what your movie's going to be?
Yes. So this I was very surprised to hear that you hadn't seen because this is a movie that I think you will enjoy. This is a movie that is my favorite Tim Burton movie. And that is saying a lot because I do have a poster of Pee-wee's Big Adventure on my wall here, but that is not the movie because I'm sure you've seen that. This is movie, it's a little different from what Tim Burton usually did. This is 1994's Ed Wood, which you have not seen.
I have not.
This is good stuff. It is streaming on Amazon Prime. I do not think for free, so you're going to have to show your commitment to the podcast and maybe have to pay $3.99 or whatever to rent it. But I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about Ed Wood, Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Bill Murray, Sarah Jessica Parker, and why I'm most excited for you to watch this, George the Animal Steele is in this movie.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait.
And he's great.
Okay. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it on the next episode
time
of Pic Six. This was our inaugural episode. Hit us up at Brad Gilmore on all the socials. Jeff, where can people find you?
Let's go to Instagram, Jeff Smith Movie Guy.
Jeff Smith Movie Guy on the Instagrams. And we will be back with our next episode talking about Ed Wood on Pic Six.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Pick six!